French squad, folks, for the Six Nations 2023 is out. These guys are obviously the defending champions. Six Nations Grand Slam champions as well. So there's a little bit of pressure on the French, especially with a home Rugby World Cup on the horizon as well. We'll go through the squad, who's kind of in and out, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. It's one of those ones where I kind of wish I watched the top 14 because Fabien Galthie can't pick a squad without picking at least like 5 uncapped 19 or 20-year-olds. That just seems to be his thing. He's certainly getting the best out of the depth in French rugby, isn't he? So I will be relying, as usual, on some of our French brethren in the comments to potentially give us a few insights. But yeah, there's a few newcomers to the squad and a fair few guys out injured as well. Plus, we'll get to the fixtures in a second, but the fixtures list is certainly harder than it was last year. Hookers, Barlow, Bobigny and Marchand. The obvious name missing there is probably Malvaca, but he is out injured, so that's not any kind of snub. You got to think Marchand's going to be the leading guy, and then it's on whoever else is there to potentially fill in. Bougari is also another one who is unavailable due to injury. So, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of depth built, but neither of those backup guys, if that's what they're going to be, are uncapped. They've both played for France before. Props, Antonio, Bai, Falatea, Hawas, Pristo, and Wardy. So, again, there's no real new faces there. Most of the new faces are in the backs. The French scrum has been pretty large and also effective in recent times. You guys probably know Bai is certainly one of my favorite players in terms of being a very skilled prop. That's not the things like skill with ball in hand, not just scrummaging. He doesn't concede many penalties, so certainly one of my favorite players. Jean-Baptiste Gros, I always forget what the S is in French, is one of the guys who's out injured, unfortunately. Ompaton is also another guy who finds himself on the outer. I haven't seen if he's injured, but he doesn't seem to be in the plans anymore after being in the mix at one point. He seems to have kind of fallen out of favour. Locks, Chaleroux, Flamand, Jean-Mes, Laveau, Taufifenua and Willemse. Willemse is a welcome addition. The obvious name missing there is Cameron Wilkie. The real skills guy in the air. They'll have to find a replacement for him because he is out. He'd been playing a fair bit of rugby alongside Flamand for France at the end of last year. They weren't like the biggest duo, but between the two of them, they were pretty effective. So I would imagine Willemse will assume his normal spot behind the tight head prop, and then I would imagine Flamand will be alongside him. But who knows? There's no new caps in the locks either. But some of the guys like Jean-Mes and Laveau, Chaleroux, these guys are like 1 or 2 caps. So there's a big dip between the likes of Taufifenua, 38 caps, Willemse at 24, down to these guys in single digits. But yeah, we'll see. The back row tends to be an area where the French and a lot of other teams have a lot of talent. And we do see the one and only uncapped guy named there. So it's Audrey Becogny, Camara, Creton, Cruz, or Crow, I always forget, Jalon, Macalou, and Olivon, plus this guy, Paul Boudouin, who is an uncapped guy from La Rochelle, only 23 years old. I think plays a bit of 7 or 8. I'm not sure if I'd be able to pick him if he was walking down the street. I probably haven't watched enough of La Rochelle, to be honest, but I mean, the back row for France is looking stacked. I don't think Cruz has played a lot of rugby, has he? Cool. Yeah, I don't think I've seen him play for ages. He's certainly a tackling machine when he's fit. But I mean, if you've got Audrey, Olivon, and it's tended to be Jalon, maybe Creton, who's another tackling machine, it's going to be competitive for whoever else it is to get into that mix, isn't it? Maybe we'll see Galthie mix things up, but from memory, they tended to be more towards the side of consistency than France. From their depth chart video we did last year, they were certainly less rotational, despite the fact they send a very changed team to Japan. Galthie tends to play things relatively, not quite Irish consistency by naming the same guys, but relatively kind of consistent. The backs, here's where we've got all these new names. So Dupont is obviously there as captain and as scrum half. That's absolutely to be expected. And he's got these guys, Coley and Ligarak, alongside him. Now, Ligarak, I know from Racing because he kicks the goals, and he's a really easy one to kind of spot. That dude seems class. He's only 20 years old. He seems like he's got a pretty big future if he can get any game time with Dupont there. Coley, I'm less familiar with, plays for Montpellier, but I know Luku and Kuyu, who have been the kind of backup guys in Dupont's absence previously, are both unavailable through injury. So it's two potential debutants there behind Dupont. Astoy, Jalibert, Intermark, that's the same 10s that we've tended to see. Jalibert has obviously been struggling behind Intermark for minutes, even though I think Jalibert, when he played last year, was really sharp. So it's a tough one for Galthie to manage. Then Astoy there as well. Does he get any game time? It's tough as well because they got Italy first, so I wouldn't imagine they're going to be kind of doing what some other teams do and sending a real B-side to play Italy. But anyway, midfielders, it's this new guy, Delbuy, who I don't know that much about. I know he's a big unit. He's over 100 kilos and he plays 12. Barassi is back in the mix after not having played for France for, I guess, a wee while. It's been at least a year. Fiku, who was phenomenal last year, just read the plays and was always in the right place at the right time. There's another uncapped guy in Emilien Gaitan, and then Moefana as well. So I know Gaitan for Po, 19 years old, mostly plays outside centre, and then Delbuy mostly inside centre, 103 kilos, big unit. Remember, there's no Vincent, who's still injured, and Dante, I think, recently got injured, so they are going to miss that kind of big bit of punch in the 12 jersey. So maybe this guy Delbuy is the guy to fill in that gap. I will be interested to see how that ends up panning out. Outside backs, Biel Biret, Dumortier, Lebel, Pinot, Bourreau, Jaminet, and Ramos. I think he's got an S right on his name. A couple of uncapped guys. Biel Biret plays wing fullback for Bordeaux, only 19 years old, so again, very young. Dumortier's 93 kilos. I think he's over 6 foot, so relatively big, like 190 odd centimeters. Pretty big for a winger. Bourros is an interesting one because there's a lot of fullbacks in France. I mean, you've got Jaminet and Ramos. Ramos was in great form at the end of the year for France. But then guys like Dulon can't get in the side, so yeah, it's tough. Villiers is injured. Raka seems to have been not picked despite the fact that he's been in great attacking form. But yeah, there's a few uncapped guys, both midfielders, outside backs, and a couple of halfbacks. Like if Dupont gets injured, that looks very concerning for France, just looking at the squad. Everywhere else, they seem to have at least some kind of depth. Maybe Marchand as well, because Bobigny and Barlow don't have a heck of a lot of game time. But everywhere else seems relatively stacked. There's no, I mentioned Woki, there's no Gerassi, there's no Verag, but for the most part, some key guys are back, some guys are out, and like I said, once again, Galthie is mixing things up with some uncapped players. I mentioned the fixtures list. It's certainly not as kind as it was last year. Like last year's fixtures list for France, I remember they started with Italy at home, which they do this time, except it's away, so they kind of get that game to shake off any rust. That does mean later on they don't get a chance to, I don't mean to take the Italians lightly, but France should be beating Italy. It doesn't mean they get a chance to potentially send a changed outfit, which some of the other teams have been known to do against Italy. Maybe not against this Italian side, who are certainly on the improve, but they start against Italy, potentially a chance to warm up a bit. But then away to Ireland. Last year, remember, it was home, which was a key fixture. So they got Ireland away. That's going to be a tough trip. Scotland at home. They'll certainly be big-time favourites for that. Then away to Twickenham. Now, by having the Twickenham game relatively late in the competition, you would imagine the new setup in England with Borthwick will have their ducks more in a row. So that will probably be more challenging here than potentially first game. And then Wales, likewise with Gatland in charge, will likely be a challenging prospect. And again, because it's the last round, Gatland should have the players playing how he wants them by that point as well. So I do think it's a pretty tough one. But this French side, it's a pretty tough side, man. So they are Grand Slam current title holders for a reason. They're on like a 13-odd match winning run. So it's going to take a big performance to beat these French guys. But that game against Ireland, that's massive, isn't it? So, yeah, we'll see. You guys let us know your thoughts on the squad. Who else is kind of in? Who else is out? Let me know more about these uncapped players if you are an avid viewer of the top 14. And, yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.